Sheep Raider is a video game based on a cartoon, and right off the bat, that's probably raising some alarm bells if you've played more than like a handful of those. Licensed games in general already have a pretty major stigma attached to them, and it goes double when a license is a children's property. Publishers tend to approach them less as interesting ways to expand upon the material or even do anything particularly interesting, and more as ways to siphon money from the parents of children already into the properties, usually assigning a random no-name studio to the job with just enough budget to turn out a product you could charitably call finished. More often than not, the results are about what you'd expect. But once in a blue moon, despite the circumstances, something actually pretty good will come from one of these deals. And that's where Sheep Raider comes in. Developed at Infocom's Leon House and published by guess who, Sheep Raider is a 3D puzzle platformer centering around Ralph Wolf, who isn't exactly unknown, but I imagine not quite as well known as some of the other Looney Tunes characters. So let me explain. His shorts centered on his repeated attempts to steal a sheep from a flock watched over by a sheepdog named Sam, usually resulting in either Sam catching him and doing a violence, or just something going wrong with his plan in general. Starting from the third short of, like, 7, it's established that they're co-workers just doing a job and they're actually somewhat friendly with each other off the clock. This isn't really like an important detail for Sheep Raider, but it informs some of the mechanics, I guess. With Sheep Raider, after another shift of constant failed attempts, Ralph is approached by Daffy Duck and roped into a game show centered around doing pretty much what he's already been doing, slowly retrieving all the sheep from Sam's flock until he's left without even one. Of course, with the added stipulation that he has to brave a series of obstacles because this is a video game, and that's really where the meat of the game is. Actually getting the sheep from Sam's flock only comprises one of the many obstacles of each level, with the rest either being to figure out how to get to the flock in the first place, or figuring out how you're going to get both you and the sheep past all the obstacles between you and the goal. All that said, don't expect anything too complex here. This is a game for 9-year-olds, so everything pretty much just has the one solution, and you're only given a small handful of tools to use per level. Something like the fishing rod gets a bit more use than most, but in general, an adult playing this game for the first time is probably not going to have a hard time with the vast majority of it. In fact, even having forgotten the majority of the puzzles since playing this game as a kid, the only times I can think of when I got stuck were when either something wasn't communicated to me properly, or when a finicky mechanic got in the way. Like, I'm pretty sure this isn't the intended way to get the last sheep, but, I mean, you can be a judge of that. So it's somewhat handicapped by being a puzzle platformer made for people who only recently discovered object permanence, but while it's not exactly something you can brag to your friends about, it's also never, like, insultingly easy. You still have to apply a sense of logic and learn the rules of the game to get by. I know saying it's made for kids is seen as kind of a lousy excuse to justify poor quality, since, hey, kids are stupid, they won't know any better, but that's not really what's happening here, or at least it doesn't feel like that to me. It feels more like the developers understood kids generally aren't as smart as an adult will be, but still wanted to challenge them at least, and I feel confident saying they succeeded. Again, I didn't really have trouble going back to it, but I know I struggled as a kid, so... Granted, there's still a few bugbears I can remember having even back in the day, such as the aforementioned finicky mechanics on certain obstacles. I don't think I ever even beat the game as a kid, because for some reason the Gossamer encounter on level 10 just didn't ever want to cooperate with me. That in the game's hub world, the TV studio is designed in a really stupid way. It's a linear succession of all the levels, and whenever you go back to it, you're spawned right at the start, and you have to walk all the way over to the level you want to go through next. Which is admittedly a small gripe, but it's kind of annoying all the same. It does have the benefit of making the trek to the last level a bit more climactic, but I don't know, I still don't really like it. But despite all that, I think the game's positives generally outweigh the negatives. Infocom's Looney Tunes games generally did a good job. not just at being solid games, but at being great Looney Tunes games. And nowhere is more apparent than here in Sheep Raider, with the set of tools and applications of said tools that feel straight out of the old shorts. And of course the slapstick humor that the series is known for is also kind of here. Like, in one level you have to lure Sam into a trap by hypnotizing him with a flute, and they give you that same flute in the next level, but when you try to use it, it's revealed that Sam put earplugs in to prevent you from doing that. Also, it does that thing where someone will, like, run off a cliff without realizing but not fall until they eventually notice, and, like, turns that into a mechanic. I think that's neat. It's also very visually nice for a PS1 game, thanks to a flat-shaded art style, hiding a lot of the shortcomings of the hardware. Although considering the PS2 was out when this game released, that probably didn't mean a whole lot to most people. I guess the one area where it can feel a bit out of place as a Looney Tunes game would be in its music, which swaps out the more, like, whimsical, classical style of most Golden Age cartoons for a more funk rock sound. But it's hard to count that as a knock against it when the soundtrack is as good as it is. So much of this game's soundtrack has stuck with me since I first played it, and hell, judging by the Bugs Bunny games, which did go for a style more reminiscent of that old sound, it just kinda had a weird vibe because of it. It was probably for the best in the end. A quick anecdote before we close out, there was actually a PC version of Sheep Raider, or I guess Sheep, Dog, and Wolf since it was only released in Europe. If you're wondering about the name change, well, let's just say it's a long story and I'd rather not have the Mafia on my tail again. From what I can tell, the PC version is generally the best way to play the game if you can get it working properly, but being an old-ass PC game with no official support post-launch, it doesn't exactly play well with modern operating systems, and there doesn't appear to be any fan initiatives to fix that, like you see with more celebrated games. But it does have a boosted frame rate and smooths out the visuals just that little bit more if that's worth it to you. But yeah, that's Sheep Raider. It's definitely a game made for children, but it's a game I'll always have fond memories of, and I still enjoy going back to it every so often. And while a 2021 adult might not be as into it as a gay baby in 2003, I still think there's enough here to be worth a look. Certainly leagues ahead of some of the other stuff I played as a kid, at least. Good lord, I am not used to reading from a script. Hi, my name is Barack Obama. That's not true. But yeah, this is like the first video game review type video I've ever really done. Like, I've done scripted videos before, but only like as a joke, basically, so like line reading and such wasn't exactly important. So yeah, I am really not used to this, talking like while reading a script thing and trying to make it sound natural, and I'm also not used to talking, like, without a script. I'm not used to, like, existing as a human, basically. So, yeah, hopefully this doesn't become an issue later. But, yeah, for now, I guess that's that. I want to do more of these in the future. This one took me, like, 3 months to actually finish, although that was maybe like a week of actual work on it. So Yeah. Um, but I've got other things I kind of want to do in the future. Like some of them you saw right when I put them on screen just now. Um, some you might not know about. And by that, I mean you definitely don't know about, unless you're, like, talking to me actively. I'm just gonna stop. This is ridiculous. I don't know how to end things.